Ambassador Aharoni has been a member of Israel's Foreign Service since the summer of 1991. During his tenure in Israel's diplomatic corps, Aharoni held 2 overseas positions in Los Angeles and New York. In the spring of 1993, he was appointed to serve under then Foreign Minister Shimon Peres as policy assistant to Israel's chief negotiator with the Palestinians. In the spring of 2006, he was appointed to serve as a senior advisor to Israel's foreign minister and vice prime minister in charge of media and public affairs. As of August 2010, Ambassador Aharoni assumed the post of acting consul general of Israel in New York. Ambassador Aharoni tries to show the world that Israel should not be defined by its problems, rather we should celebrate its positive innovations. And there's so much that he has done for Eretz Israel, and it's my pleasure to introduce Ambassador Aharoni.
Thank you so much, Noam. It's such a pleasure. Thank you for waiting for me a couple of minutes to, acknowledge that the GPS sent me somewhere else. But nevertheless, I'm here, and for the next 2 hours, we're going to have a little... Oh, it's not 2 hours? No, seriously, I was asked to speak for 5 minutes and then let me go back to class. But I'm very happy to be here, and I'd love to be able to hear from you as well. So what I will do, I will share with you an update on the situation in our beloved country, and then we will open the floor for your questions, if that's okay with you. I would like to thank my dear friend, Bruya, sitting there in the back, Bruya Angel, who is truly an angel. Who made this event possible, and of course, Mr. Katz, for all your support for Israel, for everything that you do. Thank you so much. I know that I'll be seeing more of you. If you go to a library, any library, and you look for a book titled Israel at Crossroads, you will find such a book that was published in the 40s, in the 50s, in the 60s, in the 70s, and I guess someone right now is also writing yet another book titled more or less Israel at Crossroads. These are fateful days for our people. These are fateful days for our people for 3 reasons that I'd like to share with you. The first is, Israel is facing its biggest challenge, the Jewish people is facing its biggest challenge since the Holocaust. There is a country in our region called Iran that is actively disseminating terrorism and their message of the Islamic Revolution. Not only that they do that, not only that they disseminate this message of agitation and instability, they're also preparing to build nuclear military capabilities. Now, it's important to understand that the issue at hand is not whether Iran will acquire a nuclear weapon. The question is if Iran will be able to build the capabilities to develop nuclear weapons. So it's not really about one weapon or just about the issue of Iran producing a bomb. It's about a much larger issue of whether Iran should have military nuclear capabilities. Why is it important? Why is it so important to all of us? For several reasons. The first reason is Iran is different than other countries that have nuclear programs like North Korea and, let's say, Pakistan, in the sense that they are driven by this belief that their role is to export the Islamic Revolution. In fact, they even have a ministry titled the Ministry for the Exportation of the Islamic Revolution. It's a governmental agency in Iran. But once Iran acquires nuclear capabilities, it becomes untouchable. Who's going to mess with a nuclear power? it becomes untouchable. And that's the fear. Not only that, nuclear Iran will spark immediately, almost overnight, a regional nuclear arms race. All of Iran's enemies and all of Iran's opposition will be interested in acquiring nuclear weapons as well. And lastly, if Iran gets access to a nuclear bomb, then the real concern is that terrorist organizations working under the auspices of the Iranian regime, inspired by the Iranian regime, will also have access. So these are fateful days. If, God forbid, 5 years from now, a nuclear bomb will explode somewhere in Europe, in North America, in the Middle East, we will be able to trace that terrorist attack to today's current fateful days. Now, Israel's position is very simple. We say Iran has a machine that produces enriched uranium, which is necessary in order for a country to produce a nuclear bomb. What they want to do is to retain the capabilities to enrich uranium, but at a lower level that satisfies the international community. We say we can't let them have that machine at all. They claim that they want nuclear capabilities, nuclear energy for civilian purposes. We say if it is true, if this is indeed the case, and they want nuclear capabilities for civilian purposes, then why were they misleading the international inspection regime? Why they're building their reactors under the ground? Why are they trying to hide? Why are they trying to deceive? If you're doing something that is legitimate, there is no reason for you to lie. Now, what is the solution? We believe that the solution is a combination of two things. The first is a strong, crippling, biting regime of sanctions on the Iranian government. You have to understand the issue that we have is not with the Iranian people. We have no issue with the Iranian people. In fact, we're pretty sure that the Iranian people themselves are pretty much fed up with all the misgivings of their leadership. But sanctions meaning to cripple them from the ability to conduct international monetary transactions, for example. That's how you choke their economy. But in addition to the sanctions, we have to have a strong military option on the table. Why is it important? Because unless Iran is convinced that the West is not only able to act militarily, to strike, to end the nuclear program militarily, but also is willing to do it if needed. The combination of the two, sanctions and credible military option, will produce the result. The evidence? It was the Iranians themselves that reached out to the West. The negotiations that go on in Geneva, and I'm sure many of you follow the news on this issue, it is Iran's desire to end the sanctions. Why? Because the sanctions are working. We believe that the combination of the two will produce the right result. Last word on Iran. You know, we deserve credit, especially Prime Minister Netanyahu and Israel's former Minister of Defense, Ehud Barak, that about 3-4 years ago, almost single-handedly put the Iranian issue on the global agenda. You guys are too young to remember, but 2, 3, 4 years ago, no one was seriously talking about Iran. But there's a price to that success. And by the way, this is perhaps Israel's biggest success in the field of foreign policy ever. But the price is the creation of the misperception that we own the Iranian problem. And I want you to know that. Iran is not just Israel's problem. Iran is not just America's problem. Iran poses a threat to the entire international community. It's important to understand that. If Iran will gain access to nuclear military capabilities, our lives will be changed forever. The way we travel, the way we do business, the way we go on vacation. We have to understand that. There is no doubt in my mind that if Iran will gain access to nuclear military capabilities, not so long down the road, terrorist groups inspired by Iran will have access to those devices as well. The second thing that makes those days very important days, historical days, is the thing that is being referred to in the media as the Arab Spring. I don't like the word Arab Spring, the phrase Arab Spring. Why? Because the word spring stands for something in our culture. The word spring represents something that is about renewal and growth, and is about optimism and blossoming. I'm not so sure that what we're seeing now in the Middle East is necessarily positive for the peoples of the region or even for the world. We are witnessing a very important process of the disintegration of the region around us. Let me give you one word of a little historical background. In 1916, in the middle of the First World War, the powers of the time, the Great Britain and France, signed an agreement that divided the influence between the two in the Middle East. This agreement is known as the Sykes-Picot Agreement, named after the two gentlemen that negotiated the agreement and signed the agreement. The Sykes-Picot Agreement created artificial political entities all around, thus ignoring ethnic, religious, and tribal affiliations. So you take a country like Syria, for example, there are 23 million Syrians, 74% of them are Sunni Muslims, there's another 14% are Alawites, which is a sect of Islam that is not Sunni, neither Shiite. You have 3% Druze, and you have 10 different groups of Christians. You have Kurds in Syria. And all those ethnic groups were put together under one political entity known as Syria. And today, what you're seeing in Syria is a full-blown sectarian war with over 10 different opposition groups that sometimes, by the way, fight each other, not only the regime. Now, what will be the end of this process? We don't know. I say that these are fateful days because we are witnessing something historical. We are witnessing the realignment of the countries in the Middle East. The disintegration, and it's all over the place, from Tunisia to Egypt to Syria. It's already happening in Lebanon for a long time. Sudan already split in two. And you'll see more of that to come. We see in Bahrain, in Yemen, all over the place. I'm afraid that the undoing of the Sykes-Picot Agreement will be a long and painful process, unfortunately, tragically, and sadly also bloody and violent. 120,000 people died in Syria in the last 2.5 years. It is 4 times more than the number of people that died in a century of belligerency between Israelis and Palestinians, between Jews and Palestinians. So that you get the proportions. The last thing, why I think these are fateful days, and this has a lot to do with you guys. There is a new generation in the world. In the Jewish world, you are the people that carry the new message. And this generation has a different relationship with the state of Israel. This generation is looking at Israel in the context of an opportunity and not only in the context of a problem. Let me tell you a little story. In 1951, the owner of the largest ranch in Texas came to visit Israel. And naturally, the first thing that he said, he wanted to see Israel's largest ranch. Now, we had no ranches in Israel. We had agricultural farming communities known as kibbutzim. So they took him to one kibbutz. You guys know what a kibbutz is, right? They took him to one kibbutz, and he met with the head of the kibbutz, and he asked him, what's the size of your property here? And the head of the kibbutz said, well, you see the tree over there on the hill? That's where our kibbutz ends. And the rancher said, oh, in Texas, I get into my pickup truck early in the morning, and by the time I get to the other end of my ranch, it's already late night. The kibbutznik looked at him and said, I know exactly what you're talking about. We used to have a lousy pickup truck like that too. We've come a long way since 1951. Today, Israel is the #1 producer of conceptual products in the world. We have more scientific papers published per capita than any other nation. We have more patents registered per capita than any other nation. There's a stock market in New York for technology known as NASDAQ. There are over 500 companies traded on NASDAQ. Israel sent to NASDAQ the second largest contingent in the world after the United States. In fact, we have more Israeli companies traded on NASDAQ than China, Japan, and Germany put together. Why is it all happening? It is happening because the #1 commodity today, the #1 quality that countries and societies need in order to advance is knowledge, talent, and creativity. And that you will find here in this room in abundance. So these are very fateful days because the convergence of all the three things that I told you, what's happening around us, the threat posed by nuclear Iran, and the fact that Israel is a bastion of creativity and innovation, present a unique opportunity in history, in the history of our people. You know, for many, many years, we made a terrible mistake in the way we communicated our beloved country to the world. You know, I always compare this to a first date. Imagine you go on a first date with someone that you really don't know that well. And this person on the first date, instead of doing what a normal person would do, which is trying to put your best foot forward, imagine that this person begins to discuss his problems with his neighbors. Now you go on a date and the person says to you, well, listen, you have to, before we go any further in this relationship, you need to know something about me. You see, I'm engaged in this bloody dispute with my neighbor. He called the police on me, I'm taking him to court, and you're sitting there and you don't understand why this person is telling you this on a first date. And then the person says, oh, and by the way, you have to express support in my position, because otherwise you can't be my friend. You have to stand with me. Let me tell you, the #1 rule in dating, don't discuss your problems on a first date. In fact, I propose to our people, to the state of Israel, to reverse the order. You first make a good impression. You first build relationships. And you do that by being relevant, by being interesting, by generating curiosity. And then once you win a second date and a third date and perhaps fourth and fifth and have a relationship, then you can bring up your issues and you'll be pleasantly surprised to find out that your date is not only willing to listen to you, but is actually willing to support you actively. And we need to reverse the order. First, build relationships, and then bring up your issues, and not the other way around. You cannot build a house from the roof, and that's what we tried to do for 65 years. It's not working. In 1969, we elected our first and ever and only female prime minister. Her name was Golda Meir. I don't know if you guys studied about Golda. Do you know who she was? Golda Meir was unique not only because of the fact that she was the only female prime minister in Israel's history, but also because she was raised in America. She was raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And she brought with her from America a strong sense of tikkun olam, of the need for our community to take an active role in the enormous job of repairing the world, healing the world. But she also brought with her a great Jewish sense of humor. So in 1972, when she, in the middle of her term, she was asked to host in Israel the German Chancellor, whose name was Willy Brandt. In those days, Germany was divided into East Germany and Western Germany. So he was the Chancellor of West Germany. And she wanted to impress him. And someone wisely advised Golda, if you want to impress Willy Brandt, take him on a tour of German architecture in Israel. I don't know how many of you know that, but there's a German architectural style known as the Bauhaus style, also as the international style. In Tel Aviv, we have about 4,000 Bauhaus buildings. There are a few Bauhaus buildings also in Jerusalem. It's a very special, unique kind of architectural design. So she did. She took him on a tour of Bauhaus in Tel Aviv, and they concluded the tour at the center of Tel Aviv, where we have a theater called the Abima Theater. Right next to it, she said, is the Man Auditorium, our performing arts center. And the German chancellor looked at her and said, I can't believe that you, the Israelis, made a decision to name your own performing arts center after the famous German author Thomas Mann. And she said, no. We named it after Freddie Mann from Philadelphia. He looked at her and said, Freddie Mann from Philadelphia, never heard of him. What did he write? She said he wrote a check, meaning he paid for the building. That's why we named the building after him. And Golda was smart. She understood the need to raise money in order to build infrastructure in our tiny nation. Because this you have to know. The State of Israel was founded in 1948. There were 650,000 people in the State of Israel. Today we're 8.2 million. Between the years 48 to 56, those 650,000 people absorbed over 800,000 refugees. Most of them came from Europe, many of them came from North America, from North Africa, from Central Asia, from countries like Iraq, Syria, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia. We could not have done this. We could not have absorbed. We could not have more than doubled the population in less than 8 years without the help of American Jewry. You know, I'm here traveling and speaking on behalf of Sheba Hospital. It's a great opportunity for me to share with you a story about Israeli creativity, about what Golda understood, what our leadership understands today, that what will give us the edge as a society, as a people, as a community, is the level of talent and creativity that we possess. When you go to visit a doctor and when there's a medical procedure operated on you, you should ask yourself the question is, the doctor, the surgeon that is performing this, where was he or she trained, and how much experience they have, practical experience they have, before they operate on me? Well, in Sheba Hospital, they figured it out. They created the first ever medical simulator. What does it mean? Very, very similar to a computer game. Instead of operating on a real person for the first time, you as a fresh doctor are actually given a chance to work in a hospital. There's a tiny 3-story building that is designed to function as a training facility for new doctors. It's a simulator, just like you learn how to fly on a simulator, that's just like you learn how to play a computer game. That's how you do it for doctors. Hospitals from all over the world come to Sheba to study about this thing. An example of the kind of creativity that we have. Several months ago, I was asked in New York to host one of the most unique, if not the most unique, theater groups in the whole world. What makes this theater group so unique is the fact that its entire cast, actors and actresses, are deaf and blind. Think about it. You're deaf, you're blind, you're on stage, you have to perform for 90 minutes. Forget the question of how did they even learn their parts, but how do they even know when to go? When is their cue? Well, the lady who put together this group, her name is Adina Tal. She developed a special language. The language is touching each other. They communicate by touching. And so the whole play is one long string of thousands of touches. People touch one another on stage, and that's when they know how and where to perform. The name of the group, appropriately in Hebrew, is Na Lagad. You know Hebrew. Na Lagad means in English, please do touch. Again, another example of Israeli creativity. In conclusion, three major things are happening. Israel has to deal with the Iranian threat. The world has to deal with the disintegration of our region. And we, Israelis and the Jewish people, need to know how to direct the enormous level of talent that exists among our younger generation so that together we can produce the right results. So thank you so much, and at this point I'd like to take your questions, please. One of the best in the world. We have 3 Israeli universities ranked in the top 100 universities in the world. Hebrew U, Technion, and Weizmann Institute. So these are the 2 main hubs where innovation and creativity come from. More questions? Yes, please.
What do you think about the new Iranian regime?
What do I think about the new Iranian regime? Well, the regime, unfortunately, is not new. The regime is the same regime since 1978, 79. They have a new president. His name is Rouhani. And Rouhani made a couple of soft messages that were quickly described by the international media as the charm offensive. And you know, what we say about that is very simple. Ultimately, Iran will be judged by its deeds and not just by its words. So, you know, words are cheap. Here in America, we know that the test, the ultimate test, is in the actions. So we'll wait and see what happens. I believe that within the next 3 to 6 months, we'll know whether this regime is serious about stopping their nuclear program or not. Maybe some, yes, please.
I agree with you that sanctions are really important, but how does the fact that America has, Obama has less sanctions affect the success that sanctions have been having on Earth?
I was asked about how the fact that you have the current administration is affecting the sanctions. Well, the answer is very simple. The reason why we have sanctions and why the sanctions worked thus far is because of the fact that the United States of America, headed by President Obama, took the leadership on this issue. So we are grateful and thankful, and I think the entire international community should be grateful for the administration for taking the lead on this sanction. The only thing we're saying now is that we say this to the entire international community. It would be a mistake to assume that the way to reward Rouhani for his charm offensive is to ease the sanctions. Easing the sanctions is a terrible mistake, we believe.
Time for 1 or 2 more questions.
2 more questions, okay. Yes, please.
But recently it was told that Obama over summer did let sanctions on Iran.
That
He stopped some sanctions of like thinking?
Okay, I was asked whether the U.S. administration, President Obama, stopped the sanctions. The answer is no. The sanctions were not stopped. We'll take one last question, please.
What is your opinion on the two-state solution?
I was asked what is my opinion about the two-state solution. Look, first of all, you should know diplomats have no opinions. Secondly, and more seriously, the two-state solution, let me put it this way, there's an awkward situation in Israel today where there's a solid majority of Israelis that will tell you they support the two-state solution. It's, by the way, the official policy of the last several Israeli governments. It's the official policy of the United States since President George W. Bush. And you'll have, I would say, about 70% of Israeli Jews will tell you that they support the two-state solution. But at the same time, you'll find a solid majority in Israel that will be very skeptical about the viability of such a solution. And how do you explain this awkward situation? The explanation is very simple. For many years, we, the Israelis, operated on the belief that there is a territorial deal to be made with the Palestinians. And this concept, known as the territorial compromise concept, there was a very strong political camp in Israel. That concept of territorial compromise was put to the test several times in the last 12 years. And in fact, 3 times. In Camp David II, in 2000, Clinton proposed a far-reaching territorial compromise that was rejected by the Palestinians. In the disengagement from Gaza, we gave them back all of Gaza. What we got back, and what we got in return was a barrage of rockets. And then in 2008, Prime Minister Ehud Olmert made another very generous territorial suggestion, proposal that was rejected again. The result of those string of rejections by the Palestinians convinced the Israelis that the unfinished business between us and the Palestinians is not necessarily the Six-Day War of 1967. As a result of that war, I'm sure you know, we took over Judea, Samaria, and the Gaza Strip. But rather the 1948 war of independence, which was over our very right to exist. So the answer to your question is the majority of Israelis support the two-state solution. Whether it will happen or not, I can't tell you. We're negotiating with them right now. The key is to understand that the problem is not just land. This is not a real estate dispute. The problem is the rejectionism of the other side. And this is why, if you're looking for an answer to the question why Israel is insisting on a recognition in Israel's right to exist as a national homeland for the Jewish people, this is the reason. Because all the attempts that we made to cut a territorial deal with the Palestinians were rejected by them, and that led us to believe that maybe there's something else here. Maybe it's not just about dividing the land. Maybe there's something deeper. And I believe that this element will be addressed in the framework of the negotiations. Thank you so much. I think I have to finish. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
I want to thank Ambassador Aharoni for coming here this morning and for sharing his wisdom and experience with us. It was very enlightening. We really appreciate it.